All right, so you're listening because you're interested in how companies are using tech to get more efficient. And today we're going deep on RPA and how it's changing the game for claims processing in the insurance world.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. We're diving into an article by Apanav Subharwal.
Senior RPA Business Process Consultant.
That's right, at Momentum Metropolitan Services. And he lays out a really practical roadmap for any company looking to make RPA part of how they work.
It seems like a lot of people think RPA is just about replacing people with robots.
Well, and Subharwal really pushes back on that, It's not about robots taking over, but about using tech to make things better for everyone.
Especially for customers.
Exactly.
One thing that stuck out to me was when Sabharwal said, you got to have leadership buy-in.
Yeah, that makes sense, but he really emphasizes how important it is. It's not an IT project that you can just kind of throw over the fence to the tech people and forget about.
Right, like you can't just say, okay, IT department, go make everything in the company automated.
Right. It's got to be a top-down kind of thing. You need the C-suite on board, from the CEO down to, all the VPs and everybody. If they don't get why this is a big deal,
It'll be a nightmare trying to implement it.
Total chaos.
Yeah.
Subharwal even points out that you want your leaders to be advocates for these initiatives.
So it's not just that they have to, sign off on the budget.
No, they need to understand what value RPA can bring to the table.
And I like how he broke down implementation into 3 kind of key pillars. It's like, okay, here are the steps to make this happen.
Yeah. He gives you a framework for success. So the first one is what he calls process discovery.
Which kind of sounds like, figuring out what you're doing.
It is, but it's also where companies can really mess things up.
They're just automate all the things.
Right. It's not enough to just say, let's automate everything.
Yeah.
You really need to take a deep dive into your workflows,
Yeah.
right? Figure out what's actually happening, and then pinpoint the areas where automation will have the biggest impact.
So in insurance, for example, claims processing, there are mountains of paperwork.
Oh, tons of manual data entry.
People checking policies.
Back and forth with customers,
Right.
that whole process.
Tedious.
That's prime real estate for RPA. You can automate a lot of that, free up your employees to handle the more complex stuff.
Like the more human side of things.
Exactly. And that brings us to the second pillar, which is building a center of excellence.
Okay, what does that actually look like, though?
It's about having a dedicated team. This is their job, this is what they do, they own your automation strategy.
They're not just, pulled from other departments to work on this as a side gig.
Right, it's not some side project. It needs to be people with the right skills. You need process analysts, developers, project managers, people who can make sure RPA is woven into how you work, this team. They become your RPA gurus.
Like your internal SWAT team for automation.
Exactly. They troubleshoot, train people, and just keep everything running smoothly.
That makes a lot of sense. And then the third pillar is what he calls governance and control. Right. Which, to be honest, sounds a little less fun than the others.
It might not be as flashy, but it's super important. Governance is all about making sure your automations are doing what they're supposed to.
Not going rogue.
Right, making sure they're compliant with all the rules and regulations and that you've got the right checks and balances in place. Think of it like, building safety measures around a powerful machine.
We don't want things blowing up.
RPA can be super powerful.
Oh.
But you got to use it responsibly and ethically.
Ethically, yeah. And this ties back to the leadership buy-in thing again, right?
Totally, because you need clear guidelines from the top.
Otherwise, it's the Wild West.
Everyone's doing their own thing. Nobody knows what's going on.
Right. So we've got our leadership on board. We've analyzed our processes. We've built this crack automation team.
Right.
And we've got our safety measures in place. What happens next?
Well, now things get interesting. Because Sabharwal doesn't just stop at RPA. He says, let's take it up a notch.
Let's get fancy.
Right. He wants to add AI and machine learning into the mix.
Go on.
It's like going from automating a simple task to having a system that learns and gets smarter over time.
So instead of just having a robot process a claim based on a checklist, it's like it starts to see patterns.
Right. You can make predictions or even suggest ways to improve the whole process.
That's wild.
This is where the real power of automation kicks in. It's not just about speed anymore. It's about intelligence.
And then Sabharwal also talked about RPA acting as a bridge between these old legacy systems that companies are stuck with.
Oh, I love this idea. You know how a lot of big companies have all these different systems?
They don't always talk to each other.
Right. You've got your CRM system over here, your underwriting platform over there, and then something else for compliance over there, and none of them are talking to each other.
It's a mess.
It's like trying to get people from different countries who don't speak the same language to work together. RPA can come in and be the translator.
I love that analogy.
So it can take data from one system, plug it into another, and just keep everything flowing smoothly. No more manual data entry, no more like cutting and pasting between systems.
So less time wasted on tedious tasks, fewer errors.
Yep.
Everything's just running smoother, faster. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. But with all this focus on technology, it's easy to forget about the human side of things, right?
That's a really important point. And Saparwal gets this. He says that you got to map out your customer journeys. Really understand what that looks like for them and where automation makes sense and where it doesn't.
You can't automate empathy.
Right. There's still so many situations where you need human interaction, especially when you're dealing with something as personal as insurance.
So it's not about replacing humans with robots. It's about finding the right balance between technology and the human touch.
Exactly. And that leads into what I think is a super interesting question that Saparwal leaves us with. How is your organization navigating this transformation?
It's a good question to think about. What about you as a listener? Are there areas in your work or even in your personal life where this kind of automation could make things better? What would that look like?
That's something for everyone to consider.
This has been a great deep dive, I think. We got a lot to think about. What's clear is that RPA is here to stay. It's changing the way we work, and I think that's really exciting. Thanks for joining us, and keep those brains buzzing.
See you next time.
Bye.